Hi creators, today we're going to make a blouse and it's a simple design. My daughter sketched this out because we couldn't find something like it in the retail stores. We were looking for something that was like a crop top but not too short, that had puffy sleeves, some ruffles at the bottom, and a gathered top with a tie string. So we looked and looked and we couldn't find it ready-made, so we decided to go ahead and draft a pattern like this and make it, and hopefully we can even put it in Illustrator so some of you can try it out and see if you can make it at home. So let's get started. We are going to gather and ruffle in 3 different ways. We're using a double brushed poly knit and fabric, and it's fantastic. It's super soft on both sides and it's very stretchy, 4-way stretch. And we are going to gather with the serger. So we're going to actually change the settings with the serger and gather that way. We're going to gather by making a drawstring casing for the top, and we're also going to gather the sleeves a little differently with some elastic. So 3 different ways to gather and draw in your beautiful knit fabric. So let's go ahead and get started and make this top. Step 1 is to serge the shoulder seams together. You'll need to pin or hold together your front and back bodice and serge along the top. If you're using pins, make sure they're far away from the upper edge. So we're going to serge going up and around the collar, and then we're going to come back down on the other side. We're going to serge the front 2 front panels and the neckline. Pin the front panels together starting at 3.5 inches from the top edge. You'll sew a 1/2 inch from this point all the way down to the bottom edge. Step 4, iron the seam allowance open along the front bodice. Iron the neckline down a 1/2 inch. This will create the drawstring casing for your tie. Step 5 is to sew the neckline, leaving a channel for the tie. So we're going to start at the very beginning of the drawstring casing or the channel, and we're going to go around the top of the neckline first. You'll notice that I'm using a walking foot, and a walking foot really helps when using knit fabric so it doesn't shift and turn as you're trying to guide it underneath your machine. At the keyhole, we're going to stitch right down the front to keep these two pieces together, across the bottom of the keyhole, and back up to the front where the drawstring casing is. Now we're moving on to step number 6. We're actually going to do some gathers here, or puffy sleeves. The way we're going to do this is use the longest stitch on your machine. And here I've actually got the base stitch. This is my longest stitch on my Brother machine. And it is just going to create these really long stitches where I'm able to move the fabric around. And a lot of times in patterns, they'll ask you to make 2 rows of these stitches. So if one row of stitching breaks, you have the other one that you can still use as a gather stitch. So I have long tails at either end. I started about 3 inches from either side of the puffy sleeve. I'm going to grab a hold of one of these threads and just guide the fabric along it, just like a shower curtain. So you're just grabbing the thread and tugging. You have to be gentle. So if one side doesn't work so well, you'll notice that first side didn't move, then just try the other side and gather it along like I said before, just like a shower curtain until you get the right desired length. So this is the first way you can gather your knit fabric, and this is how we're using it to make a puffy sleeve. There we go. We're going to pin right sides together our puffy sleeves to the bodice. Make sure that if you're serging that your pins are away from the edge, just like I've got them here. You don't want to run over any pins. Step 7 is to attach the sleeves to the bodice. We're going to do this on either side. So this is the first sleeve here. Step 8 is serging the edge of the sleeves. This is so we can do our next type of gather on our knit fabric. So after we do this, we'll be using that elastic to put at the edge and make a zigzag stitch to gather the edge of our beautiful blouse. Iron the sleeve edge 1 inch wrong sides together. This is going to give us a finished edge, and we'll be able to use this serged edge for our zigzag stitch with the elastic. So we're going to take our elastic. This is about a 1/2 inch, maybe a little less than a 1/2 inch thick elastic, and I am going to just wrap it around my arm. I don't like it extremely tight, so I'm going to make it a little loose. And then I'm going to mark this so I can tell where it needs to be sewn. So this is just kind of a guess it measurement. It doesn't have to be super perfect. Actually, I like it a little looser than that. There we go. And then I'll cut the other side exactly the same size. So I'm going to use this measurement here. I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra elastic so I can pull it and tug it. So I'm going to cut it about there. I'm going to mark my elastic where I want the fabric to be able to go to. So this is the width. So it's a little extra here, and it's not going to be too tight on my arms. All right, let's get back to it. Step 10 is to zigzag stitch while pulling the elastic at the edge of the bottom of the sleeve. This creates an awesome ruffle. Step 11 is to sew the tie piece. You'll fold the tie piece right sides together and start along the top. You can make your tie as thick or as thin as you'd like. Make sure that you cut off the excess, but you don't cut into the seam allowance. This next trick is pretty cool. I saw this on TikTok. So you're gonna clip the tip on the folded edge, and this creates like a little loop. We're gonna use the bobby pin and we're gonna push it back through into the tube of the tie. And we're gonna use this like we would normally use a safety pin to turn the tie right side out. Pin the front and back parts of the bodice together. We're going to start at the sleeve and go all the way down the armpit side and the side seam of the blouse. Step 12, sew the front and the back panels together, starting again at the sleeve, going down the armpit area all the way down the side seam. Okay, so we had a problem getting the tie through, and it was happening at the shoulder over and over again. And what turned out to be is this was all bunched up in here, and it was turned 2 different directions, so it was just really bulky and couldn't get through there. So I opened up the casing, and now I'm going to try to give myself a little bit more space and flip it so it's all the same direction on the shoulder seam, even though it's going the opposite way. So usually you want to iron all of your seams going to the back of the garment, like this one, but that didn't happen for whatever reason on the sleeve, so that was totally my mistake. But now we've got it kind of fixed. So I am going to stitch this back in place. Remember, this is all gathered, so these stitches, even though it's at the top, they don't have to be super perfect, because the tie is going to gather all these stitches and all of the fabric together. So I'm just going to try to stitch this along the seam there. There we go. So it should work a little easier if it's a little wider here. And the seams on the shoulder are all turned the same direction. So totally my mistake, but I think we have a good fix now. And I know it's not as pretty as it used to be, but that's going to be okay because we've got the tie that is going to gather all of this neckline up. So it's okay if it's not exactly perfect. Step 13, we're going to thread the tie back through the casing. This time it worked beautifully. I did use a safety pin instead of the bobby pin. It just worked a lot easier. So just use whatever you can to move that tie all the way through the casing, and then you'll be able to gather it up and make a cute little bow. After you take the safety pin off of the tie, you can make some little knots here. I like to make a knot at both ends and just go ahead and make a bow. Now, if the ties are too long, you can cut those off later on once you get it, fitted, and see how much of a tie that you need. Alright, so we've got this needle here. We're going to put the thread. It does help to wet the threads to get through the eye of the hook. Alright, then we're going to go through the scissor threads. Just like so. Actually, it'd be easier to do it from the back. Yeah, that is. through. Might have to do it a couple of times. All right, so we'll just right through these stitches. It's okay if we don't go through all of them. We're just going to take as much as we can through there. Okay, so once you have it down here, we're going to take it to our machine and we're going to zigzag stitch. So I already have it set to zigzag stitch, and we're just going to go back and forth over it. And set it into place, and then we can cut this excess off. Okay, and that gives us that rounded edge, and there's no extra serge or thread. Step 14, we're going to serge the ruffle. So first you're going to need to iron the ruffle in half, and right side is facing out, so wrong sides together. We are going to serge the edge of the ruffle, but first we have to set the serger. So the yellow dial is going to be set to 6, the pink dial is set to 6, the green dial is set to 4, and the blue dial is set to 4. And then on the side, you're going to turn the knob all the way to 2. And so once you have all that set, it should ruffle this to make it half as long as the original length. So we've got a little extra here, but this is just in case we need it. So we're going to go ahead and put the raw edges toward the inside the machine, and you'll start to see it's going to go ahead and start to gather. It does this on its own. Step 15 is to top stitch along the seam of the ruffle and the bottom of the bodice. This will help keep your ruffle down so it doesn't flip up.